The scene is 1778 and the flames of the American Revolution are burning hotter than ever. The Continental Army is grappling with all the challenges you'd expect from a rebel force fighting the world's most powerful empire. British troops are bearing down, supplies are dwindling, and morale is a daily struggle. But in the midst of this chaos, a surprising alliance forms, one that will bolster the Americans' resolve and add a whole new dimension to their fight for independence: the alliance with the Oneida Nation. Now, the Oneida weren't just any tribe, they were part of the powerful Iroquois Confederacy, a league of 6 nations who had traditionally stayed out of European conflicts, or, when they did get involved, were known for their internal divisions. And in this case, the American Revolution was no different. When the British and Americans started to vie for Native American support, the Confederacy was split down the middle. Some tribes favored the British while others leaned toward the American side. But it was the Oneida who made a bold and decisive choice to ally with the Americans, and that move would prove crucial. To get why this was such a big deal, you have to understand the Iroquois Confederacy's dynamics. This was a group of 6 Native American nations, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora, that had stood as a political powerhouse in the northeastern colonies for centuries. And the Confederacy was no ragtag alliance. They had a sophisticated system of government, well-established trade networks, and a reputation for skilled diplomacy. When the revolution kicked off, though, the Confederacy faced a dilemma. They'd seen colonial disputes before, and usually they managed to stay neutral or play both sides. But this time, neutrality was increasingly hard to maintain. As British forces pushed through New York and beyond, they pressured the Iroquois to support the crown. The Mohawks, led by the influential Joseph Brant, a guy with connections high up in British society, rallied to the British cause. On the other side, the Oneida found themselves drawn toward the Americans. It wasn't a simple decision for the Oneida. Aligning with the Americans meant stepping out on a limb, taking a risk their Iroquois brothers weren't all on board with. But the Oneida had a distinct perspective, partially shaped by their deepening ties with Christian missionaries, particularly Samuel Kirkland, a Presbyterian minister who'd been working among them for years. Kirkland was a vocal supporter of American independence, and his influence ran deep within the tribe. For the Oneida, the relationship wasn't just about trade or politics, it was a cultural bridge that brought them closer to the revolutionary ideals of freedom and self-determination. And then, there was the practical angle. The Oneida were located right in the middle of contested territory. Their villages were in the path of British and Continental movements, and neutrality just wasn't feasible anymore. If they didn't choose a side, they risked being targeted by both. Once the Oneida made their choice, they didn't hold back. They offered warriors, scouts, and supplies to the Continental Army, lending not just manpower, but also their intimate knowledge of the land. And here's where their role becomes a game changer. These weren't just soldiers, they were skilled trackers and fighters who understood the terrain like no one else. In a war where the home field advantage often meant the difference between victory and defeat, the Oneida brought irreplaceable expertise to the American side. One of the most famous instances of Oneida involvement came during the winter encampment at Valley Forge. The Continental Army was starving, freezing, and on the brink of collapse. Supplies were scarce and morale was plunging to new lows. But the Oneida, led by an Oneida woman named Polly Cooper, delivered a supply of corn to the soldiers. This wasn't just any corn, it was white corn, a staple food that had sustained the Oneida for generations. Polly Cooper stayed behind to show the Americans how to properly cook the corn, a small but impactful gesture that fed starving men and quite possibly saved lives. Then came the Battle of Oriskany in 1777, one of the bloodiest encounters of the war, and a moment that tested the Oneida alliance like never before. Oriskany wasn't just an American versus British battle, it was an Iroquois civil war in miniature. Oneida warriors fought alongside American militia against British allied Mohawks, Cayugas, and Senecas. This was family fighting family, friend against friend, all wrapped up in the greater conflict of the Revolution. Despite the heavy losses, the Oneida and their American allies managed to hold their ground. The battle didn't end with a clear victor, but it sent a powerful message. The Oneida were fully committed to the American cause, even if it meant clashing with their Iroquois kin. For the Americans, this loyalty and sacrifice were a testament to the strength of the alliance. The Oneida weren't just allies, they were brothers in arms, spilling blood alongside the Continentals. After Oriskany, the Americans knew they couldn't take the Oneida's loyalty for granted. Congress formally recognized the Oneida's contributions, a rare move that underscored how vital their support had been. In 1778, a formal alliance was established, with promises of friendship, support, and mutual protection. The Oneida continued to aid the Americans throughout the war, not just in battle but through espionage, scouting, and intelligence gathering. Their warriors fought in numerous skirmishes, often out of the spotlight but always with determination. Their sacrifices were steep. Oneida villages were targeted in retribution by British forces and pro-British Iroquois tribes. Homes were destroyed, families were displaced, and the tribe endured losses that would affect them for generations. The Oneida's choice to support the American Revolution wasn't just a footnote in history, it was a pivotal factor that influenced the course of the war. Their contributions at Valley Forge, Oriskany, and countless other moments demonstrated that they were more than allies. They were essential to the American struggle for independence. But after the war, the gratitude the Americans had shown during the conflict faded quickly. Promises of protection and friendship gave way to policies of displacement as the new United States expanded westward, often at the expense of the very people who had helped secure its freedom. For the Oneida, the post-war years were a stark reminder of the fickle nature of alliances in wartime. Today, the story of the Oneida Alliance is a powerful reminder of the complexities of the American Revolution. It wasn't just a fight between redcoats and patriots, it was a conflict that drew in diverse peoples, each with their own interests, sacrifices, and stories. The Oneida's loyalty, courage, and resilience remain a testament to the strength of conviction and the cost of freedom. Lessons as relevant now as they were on the battlefields of the 18th century.